This is the last section of our revising and editing. We worked on organization and ideas, then we went to the sentence level. At this point, we're going to focus on lessons that deal with conventions. Conventions are grammar, mechanics, and spelling. And I have activities that you can show children so they get into their papers and fix them on their own. Because that's the whole goal of all of my revising and editing, is that ultimately students can do these activities on their own. So these are lifelong skills they can take with them. For mechanics, primarily we were looking at capitals and we were looking at periods and making sure the students had complete sentences. I showed those skills in our complete sentences section. In this particular part of my revising and editing, going to focus on grammar and spelling. I have 3 activities in this section: verb tenses and subject-verb agreement. That would go under the grammar piece. Then I have a whole process in which I'm going to connect spelling to writing, because there's always a disconnect when students are learning spelling rules and patterns and then they go to write and they don't connect what they learned to their writing. So I'm going to show you an activity that I use for that as well. Here's our conventions, all of the different activities we're going to cover. Let's start with our verb tenses. When we're working on verb tenses, I always want to make it meaningful. Who cares what a tense of a verb is unless there's a reason for that? That's the problem with adjectives and nouns and verbs, the parts of speech. Taught in isolation and not connected to using them for a purpose, children don't remember what the parts of speech are. It's the same with verb tenses. I'm going to start by showing children that verb tenses have a purpose. First of all, we're looking at our past tense, things that have already happened, present tense, tell what is happening right now, and future tense, what will happen in the future. So we have an arrow that points for past, an X for present, and an arrow going to the future for future tense. Past tense, present tense, future tense. Boys and girls, who cares? Why do I need to know this? When you are writing narratives, information, summaries, you may be writing opinions, and that type of writing will have a tense that you need to use. So let's go and look at the types of tenses that are typically going to be connected to the type of writing. Let's go to the past tense. Notice we have narratives. Narratives most of the time are written in the past tense, but the dialogue and the thoughts could be written in any tense. When we are talking about social studies, about events, so let's make sure we put events from the past, then we are going to use what? The past tense, because it's already happened. Notice in our present tense, we have science's present tense. If I say the sun was our closest star, that's not correct. I'm using present tense, the sun is our closest star, because that is always true. You can't put all the different tenses of a verb in the thesaurus, so what do they choose? Present tense. If I look up a verb, whatever tense it is in my writing, I have to change it to present tense, find that verb in present tense, and then change it back to whatever tense I'm using in my writing. When we are summarizing a story, it is supposed to be summarized in the present tense. John walks in the room and sees his mother. She's showing him his birthday present. Notice I'm retelling the story, but I'm saying it in the present tense, like I'm in the story. The next one is an opinion. An opinion is supposed to be something that you think or feel. You're supposed to put it in the present tense because that's supposed to be true according to you. I wouldn't say The 3 Bears was my favorite book. I would say The 3 Bears is my favorite book. Civics, and you're writing about government, like the 3 branches of government, we know that that is true. That is always true. At this point in time, these 3 branches are always true for us. So what tense would that be? That would be present tense. In the future tense, we're always dealing with things like a forecast, something that we're saying that is going to happen. Once you introduce what past, present, and future tense is, then connect it to the type of writing so that you show tenses have a purpose, you then record verbs in the tense chart. So I may start with run, go to the past tense, I ran, I will run. And you can continue showing different types of verbs, whether they're regular, irregular verbs. You can record them on the chart. So you have introduced past, present, future. You've connected it to the type of writing. Then you've played with some verbs, where you've taken verbs and put them in present, past, and future. Next, we are ready to go to our papers and fix tense issues. How this works is you have your directions up at the top. On the left side is the paper in which we fixed the verbs, and on the right side is completed revised piece of writing where the verbs have been corrected and put in the correct tense. The title of this writing is called The Butterfly. That means that this is a piece of writing that's dealing with science. When we're writing in the subject of science, and in this case, writing about butterflies, what tense typically will you be writing when it comes to science? Present tense. Right now, because it's supposed to be true. After we identified the type of writing and we know the tense, then we will, step 1, box the verbs. So we went through our paper and we found all the verbs and we boxed them. What if you're doing this activity with a small group of kids, or you're showing a piece of writing and many kids still have difficulty identifying the verbs in their writing? I would put the boxes around their verbs, so that this activity goes at a nice fast pace. If I was doing this whole group, what I could do is have a passage of writing, just like you see on the left, and I could then number different sentences. As you can see, I had sentence 1, 2, 3, and you would number the rest of it. Let's say I have different color tables. Yellow table, you're going to box the verb in sentence number 1. Green team, box the verb in sentence number 2. And I would just assign different tables a sentence number. They would then talk about the sentence and box the verb. Then I would come back whole group. All right, let's go to sentence number 1. We read the sentence, every spring an insect magic show occurred. And then the students in that group would say, box the verb, occurred. And we all would then box that verb. After we box the verbs, we go back and we read the verbs in isolation to identify whether they're past tense, present tense, or future tense. We went through and we put an arrow if it was past tense. If it was present tense, we would put an X, just like that. After we went through all of our verbs and we put past, and in this case there was just past or present, then we had X's and arrows on our page. Step 2, it's optional. It's actually something that you may want to do in the beginning when you're first working with the verbs, and then fade it out. If you are going to use step 2, what you would do is you would box the verbs, then jump to step 2. You wouldn't put the arrows or the X's on the verbs yet. Let's look at our verbs. What do we have? We have past tense, we have present tense, we have future tense. Let's look at our first box verb. What is it? Occurred. What tense is that? Past tense. Let's write it underneath our list. So you would place that word on the past tense column on your chart. Let's take occurred and put it in the present tense. Occur. Let's put it in the future. Will occur. And at this point, you would go through each one of the verbs on the paper. You would say what the verb is, record it underneath the right column, past, present, or future, and then you would find the other tenses that match that verb. Again, this is optional because that's when you're really focusing on the tenses. So kids start mastering those tenses and they can easily go from one tense to another with a verb. After you do that, you go to the box verb and you say the word is occurred. What tense is it? Past tense. Put a past tense arrow on it. And then you go through and you do that for each one of the verbs. Let's jump to step 3. At this point, we have all the verbs boxed, we have arrows and X's, and we know what tense should science have? I should be seeing X's. So we go through and we visually can see, oh, this word has a past tense. What do I need to do? I need to change it to present tense. Occurred, present tense, occur. Let's do it. We find all of the verbs that don't have X's and we're going to change them to a present tense. As you can see, our finished piece of writing has the correct verb tenses. This is a wonderful activity for your students to fix their verb tenses. That's the whole point, is that they can eventually have this skill that they can use on their own. And finally, we have a purpose for teaching verb tenses. For subject-verb agreement, on the left page, we have our sample activity in which we will walk through steps in order to fix the subject-verb agreement. And on the right page is our chart. So let's go over to our chart first. You can duplicate the chart, put it underneath your document viewer for your students to visually see this chart. This is not a static chart. This chart is for you to identify nouns and verbs, whether they're singular or plural, but this is a starting point. When you learn different types of singular or plural nouns and verbs, most especially the toughies, then you can put them on your chart. So this is supposed to be a chart that you have as a starting point, a bank, and then you keep adding to as you go through the year. We show our students that we have our nouns, and nouns can be singular, nouns can be plural. And when we talk about singular, we mean that it means one thing, and plural means two or more. So when we're looking at our singular noun, it means one. And at first, that seems pretty easy, like I or you can be singular. But notice, sometimes when I'm saying you, I mean more than one. I'm talking to a group over there. So that could be plural. They is plural. We have pronouns that we're identifying as singular or plural. And also we have some tough words like mouse compared to mice, or person, people. We also have Dave or Sarah, meaning one or the other, so that's singular. But Dave and Sarah means two, both together, so that means plural. As we go through, we'll notice there's some tough ones also that children have a difficult time with, like everyone, everybody, anyone, anybody, someone, no one. When we look at those words, those are considered singular. And as you go through the year, you'll start having more difficult singular nouns. For instance, team. Team means one, meaning that one group. So when you're looking at a group, even though it's consisting of many people, it's one group. So we have team, a choir, that would be one group. So as you start learning different types of singular and plural nouns, you would record the toughies on those lists so that the students learn those rules and they can apply them. When we look over here at our verbs, we have our list of singular and plural verbs. Many times, a singular verb will end with the letter S. Not always, but many times. So walks is going to be singular. Runs is singular. So I like to tell the kids, when you hear that S at the end of the verb, many times it's singular. That way you can attach S to the word singular. So runs, I hear the S, singular. Run, I don't hear the S, what is it? Plural. You would have this chart displayed up on your document viewer, and you're going to say a noun. And the students will put up one hand if it's singular. If it's plural, they put up two. So that way they can practice what a singular and plural noun is. So I may say something like I, and then all the kids put up one hand. And let's say I'll say monkeys, women, woman, choir, team, children. And we'll do the same thing when we talk about singular and plural verbs. So we may do something like run, runs, walk, walks. So I could practice with the verbs that end with an S. Then we could go to is, are, was, were, and we can practice that. So they get fluent and they easily can interact with this chart. The chart can be displayed so they can find those different words if they need to, and you can keep adding words to this chart. Now let's use singular and plural nouns and verbs so that we can apply it to subject-verb agreement. And what do we mean by subject-verb agreement? We mean if it is a singular noun, then what does it need to match with? A singular verb. If it's a plural noun, what does it need to match with? A plural verb. They need to equal each other. So we'll go through and we'll follow the steps. Step 1, we're only looking at subject of the sentence. So we go through and we say, the boys is going up the steep volcano. Who or what is this sentence about? Boys. Boys, is that singular or plural? And the kids put up 2 hands. All right, let's put our P there for plural. Let's go to our next sentence. They wants to reach the top. Who or what is this sentence about? They. Singular or plural? Plural. If theys makes it, they gets a special prize. All right, let's hold on a minute. We have a dependent clause and we have an independent clause. Look at a clause, it needs to have a subject and a verb. So let's look at our dependent clause. If they makes it, who or what are we talking about? They. What do we have? Singular or plural? Plural. They gets a special prize. Who or what are we talking about? They. Plural. Let's go to our last sentence. No one know what it is. Who or what are we talking about? No one. Singular or plural? Singular. And again, we've been practicing that. Let's go to our step 2. Let's check the verbs. Are they singular or plural? We go back. The boy is singular. They wants. Ooh, I hear the S. So what do we know when we hear the S? Many times it's going to be singular. Makes. What kind of verb? Oh, I hear the S. So what is it? Singular. They gets. Singular. No one know. Plural. Let's go back to the first sentence. PS does not equal. I need to fix it. PS does not equal. I need to fix it. So I'm putting not equal signs. And now we're going to go back and we're going to make them agree. The boys is. I need to change is into a plural. What's my word? Are. They want. Get rid of the S. They makes. I need to change makes into a plural. Get rid of the S. They gets. Get rid of the S. No one, no. Uh-oh, I need to make it into a plural. Add an S. And do you always add an S to make it a plural? No. But many times that is the case. Let's go back and read it now. The boys are going up the steep volcano. They want to reach the top. If they make it, they get a special prize. No one knows what it is. Notice we went step by step teaching nouns, verbs, singular, plural. Went to our paper, identified the subject, whether it was plural or singular. Then we went back, identified the verb, whether it was singular or plural, put our marking, and then checked to see if they equaled each other. If they didn't, then we went back and we were fixing our verb. The whole point here is children understand subject-verb agreement is important, and this is a way they can go into their writing and fix it. The last activity in our conventions is focusing on spelling. Let's turn to our spelling pages. In this revising and editing section, I'm focusing on spelling, not where I'm teaching the spelling. I have a very detailed spelling and phonics program in which there are weekly lessons to instruct your students so that you have a systematic spelling instructional program. That being said, you have your spelling instruction at another time of your instructional day. Our focus for spelling here is to connect that instruction to your students' writing. That's usually the issue. You'll have children that do really well with spelling in isolation, but they don't connect it to their writing. So the whole focus here, when we are talking about spelling, is going to be the behaviors of a good speller. How to connect everything that you know about spelling to writing. That's absolutely essential. Let's look at my spelling corrections chart. A chart that you can display to your students so that when you give spelling corrections, they understand what the markings mean. The feedback should be feedback that makes them think like a good speller and connect what they've learned in their spelling to their writing when they're fixing it. So let's look at how do you give feedback to your students. On this spelling correction chart, here's an example of text that a child has written. The boy was perplexed when he saw the dog fly like a bird. There's 3 different ways that you give feedback. You'll see a check, and that is for sight words. Our second feedback is going to be connected to rules or patterns that they learned in their spelling instruction. And finally, our last type of feedback is high-level vocabulary that is out of their spelling range. This is our different ways that we give feedback. Let's go up on top of our chart and let's look at how I did that. Here we have the boy was perplexed, and I put a check at the end of that line. When I give feedback for sight words, I give a check, and the check goes at the end of a line. I don't want to say to a student, go back to your paper and find all the misspelled sight words and fix them. Because once they've written it all out, they go back to look at their paper, they basically say, they all look good to me. A check on a line, so they're not looking at the whole paper, and that check means there's one sight word on this line that was misspelled. You find it, you fix it, because that's what a good speller does. A good speller finds the word and they fix it. If I circled the word, I'm taking away the behavior I'm trying to teach. I'm just putting one check so they know, okay, on this line there's one. It's just one line for them to look at. They're not looking at the whole paper. Notice the next line has 2 checks, meaning that there were 2 sight words there. So we had when and saw that were misspelled. So they would circle them just like up here. They would circle them. Then they would go back to their sight word wall or list or any type of bank that has their sight words. They would find the correct spelling and they would write it above the word. So we had check here, 2 checks here. They would go back and they would write the correct spelling above the word. After sight words, the next type of feedback that you're going to give students is for rules or patterns that they've learned in spelling. When you are teaching spelling rules, how to put 2 vowels together and you'll have a long vowel sound, how you'll have bossy E at the end of a word, how to add inflectional endings, whatever your rules or patterns that you are teaching to your students, you want to identify those rules with what I call a signpost word. A signpost word is a word that you are going to pull from your spelling instruction and you're going to post it on a spelling wall or a spelling chart. This is what I mean by that. We were learning, let's say, the EA long vowel pattern, and we made many different words from this EA pattern. Team, eat, each. We kept making different words. We had that in our spelling instruction. Then when the students go to write, anytime there's that EA pattern, which we've played with many words using that pattern, they need to use that EA vowel pattern correctly. And instead of just putting EA there, I like to put a signpost word, a word that's very familiar. Like for instance, with EA, I use the word eat. All the students know the word eat. It's a very simple word for that pattern. That's my signpost word that I'm going to keep so that the children know, oh, team, that's like eat. It has the EA. So they make the connections with a signpost word. So we have our word that is a signpost word here, eat. Notice the student here in this example wrote the word treat. My feedback is not to circle the word, it's to write the signpost word. We've taught this pattern in our spelling instruction. After we've learned this pattern, I chose the word eat as our signpost word. And now when I go back and I see that you didn't use that pattern, I'm going to write the signpost word, eat, there. And then I'm going to underline the EA on the word eat. That means you go back to your word and you will fix that pattern. Notice up here on my page, I have the word fly. Our signpost word was my. So I wrote my and then I underlined the Y. This way the students are thinking like a good speller. They're going to see the word fly, know they misspelled it. Oh, wait a minute, I should know that word because I've learned that in my spelling instruction, which is key. It's interesting how when you say to children, you know this rule. So that means you know this rule. It's like my. Now you fix the word. So they're going to fix fly from the I ending to adding Y because they learned that rule. And then my was their signpost word for that rule. Single syllable word that ends with an I sound. What letter is at the end? Y. I don't know why. It's just the letter Y. So we've done our spelling instruction. We put my as our signpost word. If the kids don't spell those words correctly, I put my there, I underline the Y, and then they can fix it. But what are they doing? They're connecting their spelling instruction to their writing, and they're fixing it the way a good speller would fix it. It's the same for the word bird. We had learned our R-controlled vowels. We had made many different words with our R-controlled vowels. And for my IR, R-controlled vowel, I'm going to use a word very familiar to the kids, girl. So when they had bird, I wrote girl, I underlined the IR, and now the student can go back and add the I to the bird. Finally, we had on the bottom, perplexed. Let's say a student was writing and they had the word perplexed in their writing. I want them to keep those high-level vocabulary words. Some students will not, even though they may have a high-level word, won't use it if they don't know how to spell it. And I want to tell them, look, if it's not in your spelling range and it's not a sight word, I'm fine with you saying the word slowly and spelling it the best you can. And my feedback then, after they've written, is to write the word. So over here you see the boy was perplexed. He didn't know how to write perplexed. He did the best he could. I write the correct spelling underneath. If it's underneath the word, it means, wow, great word, high-level word. It's not in your spelling range, but I want you to use those high-level vocabulary words. So I write the correct spelling underneath an out-of-range word. This page is set up in two sections. One is while writing. What behaviors does a good speller utilize while writing? And then on the bottom, you're going to see there are 1, 2, 3 different parts to this bottom section. This is after writing. Once the students have the words on the page and they finish writing, this is the spelling feedback that you, the teacher, are going to give your students from the chart that I just showed you. I don't want my students, as they write, all of a sudden you see hands shooting up saying, how do you spell this word? How do you spell this word? Because what happens? They lose their fluency. They forget about what they're writing, and all that practice, all that planning of ideas and the rehearsal of those sentences is gone because they're worried about spelling a word. And in this case, they're writing the earth is big and round. They go to write the word the, now they're writing earth. How do you spell earth? Whole class, I tell everybody stop. We are going to have a high school student in our room right now. So that's what I do first, because when you give feedback with spelling, you'll have some kids that will close down. They won't listen to you. It's just give me the right spelling. I'm not going to do anything until you tell me how to spell the word. I want to eliminate that. I want to keep the fluency of the writing. So I go like this. Boys and girls, let's say this student who raised their hand about how to spell earth is Samantha. Samantha is going to be a high school student. Everybody, let's say, ooh, high school student. Ready? Ooh, high school student. And I'm treating her like she's a high school student. So she's going to be more receptive. Everybody in the class now is looking at her like, ooh, she's a high school student. Next, I'm going to say, Samantha's about to write the word earth. She's not sure how to spell the word. So she's going to do what high school students do. If they don't know how to spell a word, what do? They don't stop writing. Everyone say that. Don't stop writing. That's right. What do you do instead? You are writing. You have the word the down. Now you're going to earth. You're not sure how to write it. What do? You say the word slowly and write it down the best you can. So what do? Say the word slowly and we write it down the best we can. Then if it doesn't look right, what do you need to do? Circle it and keep writing. So what do if you don't know how to spell a word? Say it slowly, write it down, look at it. If it doesn't look right, circle it and keep writing. That's what good spellers do. And then we all go, great job, Samantha, for being a good speller. And that's really important to say that part. Once I say that, it prompts her to go and apply that skill instead of waiting for me to tell her how to spell the word earth. So at this point, I'll say, look how you're saying the word slowly, writing it down. And if it doesn't look right, what do? Circle it. And then what? Keep going. That's right. So this is what we do while we write. And that's how I give the feedback, by having a student do this. And then when I have other kids say anything about spelling, I'll just say, oh, what do we do? Say it slowly, do the best you can. Doesn't look right, circle it, and keep writing. That's right. The next section of this example is feedback after the student has finished writing. So they have all this writing on their page. I'm going to follow the chart that I showed you. So notice we have the rocks have minerals that look shiny and bright. They have many uses. So as a teacher, when I see this, my first feedback is going to be for high frequency words. So I'm going to go through on each line. The rocks have, oh, I notice have is a high frequency word. That looks shiny and bright. They have many uses. Wow, there's 4 high frequency words there. So I put checks on the lines for any of the high frequency words. When students get this feedback, they go to their line, they find the word, then they go to their chart, they find the word have, and then they fix it. They notice, ooh, all 4 here are high frequency words. They're going to go to their chart, they're going to find the word, and then they're going to fix it. We have our high frequency word feedback. Next, we're going to look at signpost words. So I may have different words up on my spelling wall once I teach different patterns. So on my long vowel wall, I may have A-E-I-O-U. And next to my long I have different long I spelling patterns that I've taught the students in their spelling. I will have these signpost words up, and in this case, these are long vowel words next to my long I. Here I had duck, a short vowel word with a k sound at the end. C can't be by itself, so it has to be with K. C, K, they need to be a pair when we have our short vowel word, and you hear the k at the end. Happy, I have a 2-syllable word. So what happens when I hear E at the end of the 2-syllable word? It's going to be the letter Y. So I'm teaching the rule, then I keep the signpost words up there. So I have my different rules posted and sorted in different categories for the students to go to. I go and I read this passage, and now I'm going to apply my signpost words. The rocks. Notice rocks is misspelled. My signpost word is duck, so I'm going to write duck, and I'm going to underline the CK. This way, they're thinking like a good speller when they fix it. Oh, rocks. That's a single syllable word, and it's a short vowel. So what do I need when I have k at the end? I need CK. And I'm going to fix it. It's just like duck. We learned that. Now I need to use it in my writing. I'm now going to take my other spellings like happy, underline the Y. I see bright. I'm going to take the word light. And now the students have the different misspelled words with the spelling signpost word above it, and they can fix the spelling on their own using the skills they learned from their spelling. So they fix their spelling like a good speller. My last feedback is when students use those high-level vocabulary words that are out of their spelling range, what do? I'm just going to write the word underneath to show them, good job, you used the word minerals. It's not in your spelling range, so I'm going to give it to you. Here's our spelling feedback, all the different ways that you can give feedback so that students connect what they learn in spelling and apply it to their writing, teaching the behaviors of a good speller. We just finished our convention section and our entire chapter on revising and editing. In the next video, I'm going to show you how to take all these tools that I've shown you in my revising and editing videos and put it together in an easy folder system so that you can organize all the tools and have easy access to them whenever you're teaching children any types of revising and editing skills or applying those learned skills to fix their own writing. And also how to poll kids in small groups to give feedback to any editing and revising that they specifically need. Let's go to that video and put it all together.